She's an Afghani activist and writer, and she'll be beginning tonight's meeting.
Thank you to Stop the War for organising this event and for inviting me to speak here today. One of the topics I would like to begin with talking about, which is very close to my heart, is the issues of women's rights and human rights in Afghanistan. Because the US and NATO used the claim to liberate the Afghan women and secure human rights in Afghanistan as an excuse to continue the occupation. But the situation of the Afghan women is today worse than it has been. They're beaten to death, raped, stoned to death, poisoned in schools, harassed on the streets, burnt alive, and thrown acid on. The situation of the Afghan women are worse today than ever because Afghanistan is still not independent, but occupied by foreign forces. You cannot be at war and be free at the same time. You cannot place men who raped, tortured, and killed hundreds of innocent people in power to run the country and call it democracy and freedom for women. Karzai has passed on a law called the Law of Elimination of Violence Against Women, and this law criminalizes 23 acts of violence, including child marriage, abuse, physical abuse and rape, and forced marriage, all of which are on the rise today. This law is not implemented when it comes to protecting girls and women, when it comes to being beaten to death by the husbands or raped. It punishes the victims instead. So women are left with no choice but to commit suicide or set themselves on fire in order to escape the injustice and misery. It has been 12 years since the occupation, and Afghan women have not even been able to achieve the slightest, the most basic rights, and rather their rights and rather their sufferings and hardships have been treacherously misused for promoting the colonial policies of the US and the West. The women of Afghanistan know that until they do not snatch their rights with their own hands, no one else can liberate them, and they will not see a better day and the slightest improvement in their condition. They know that women in no country in the world have been able to attain their rights with the blessings of others without struggling themselves. Afghan women have been experiencing the gifted rights of the US and NATO for the past 12 years, and it has been nothing but enslavement and deception. Their message is, we don't need help from the West. Many people, women especially, have asked me, but don't you think if the US and NATO leave Afghanistan, the situation of women will get worse? In turn, I asked them, what would you choose as a woman to liberate you? A gun pointed at your head, or education, the rule of law, and justice? I often get silence as an answer. By relying on criminals and human rights violators such as Sayyaf, who is currently running for presidency, Khalili and Fahim, who are just as misogynist as the Taliban and responsible for the death and suffering and displacements of thousands of Afghans during the civil war, the US and NATO are only serving their own imperialistic interests in Afghanistan. Afghanistan today has become, like many African countries, a playground where Western powers fight each other for power with the aim of controlling the country's resources. And one of the strategies that the West uses and has been using for decades, be it in Asia, Africa, or the Middle East, is to destabilize the country by placing a corrupt and puppet government in power to weaken the nation and loot its resources. And that's exactly what they've done in Afghanistan, because today Afghanistan is the second most corrupt country in the world. No peace will come out of creating a joint government consisting of the Northern Alliance, the Taliban, Gulbuddin's party, and other human rights violators. it will only push Afghanistan towards another civil war. No, peace can only be attained through the prosecutions and punishment of these criminals and nation traitors. Afghanistan is not only looted for its minerals, but recent reports also show an increase in the production of opium and cannabis. So how does opium leave Afghanistan? Someone I spoke to during my last visit to Afghanistan told me that his friend who works in Kabul International Airport told him that he's witnessed with his own eyes Afghan ministers and US officials exchange bags of money and drugs, shake hands, and then one of them leaves in his expensive car for his house in Kabul, and the other one leaves in his private plane back to the West. Civilian death toll also continues to increase, with the latest attacks in Kunar province, which has left nine women and children dead. Around 1,000 Afghan civilians have been killed and 2,000 have been wounded in the first half of this year alone by NATO and Taliban, marking a 24% increase in civilian casualties. As well as being attacked during night raids, killed by roadside bombs and suicide attacks, and air raids, Afghans are also under drone attacks. According to a recent report, the British military fired 7 times as many drones from unmanned drones in Afghanistan last year compared to 5 years earlier in 2008. There is a 27% rise in children casualties. The 27% rise in children casualties as a result of airstrikes, killing and maiming of children, sexual violence against children, and recurring attacks on schools and hospitals. In June alone this year, 7 children have been killed and 4 have been injured in Kunar province by an airstrike. 10 children have been killed and 9 wounded by a roadside bomb in Paktia province, and 9 children have been killed in eastern Afghanistan by a bomb blast. These children are the future of Afghanistan and have been the ones who have been paying the highest price for this war, so-called war on terror. This war is killing and destroying the future of Afghanistan. I want you to imagine a cycle and place war and occupation at the top of this cycle. War and occupation leading to increased instability, to lack of education, poverty, corruption, increase in mental health issues and domestic violence, and death which can occur at each stage of this cycle. It is only by eliminating war and occupation from this cycle that we will slowly start to see improvement in all the areas mentioned. War, occupation, and military interventions have never brought peace and justice anywhere in the world, and is not the answer to freedom and democracy. For the US and its NATO allies, the well-being of the Afghan people has no value. They only want relative stability in order to continue the occupation and maintain military bases in Afghanistan, and also to maintain power and control over Afghanistan's neighboring countries like China, Russia, and Iran. But the West also needs to remember that the Afghans have never and will never accept domination by foreign invaders. There is a reason why Afghanistan is called the graveyard of empires. So my request from you today is to please not allow Afghanistan become a forgotten war. Please don't let the plight of the Afghan women struggling for justice and burning in the fire of the oppression of the occupiers go unheard. Please don't let the lives and the names of the children killed as a result of this war on terror go unnoticed. So let's break the cycle of war by saying no to occupation, no to war, and no to Western interventions. Thank you.